All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chantel Phillips, and today we're going to talk about should the federal minimum wage be increased. Let's talk about money. Next to water, it's a major necessity in our lives. We all need it to survive, but we don't make enough of it. Some of us live paycheck to paycheck, fall behind on bills, or go without because we don't get paid enough. Sometimes people have to take extra jobs just to make ends meet. Our economy can't afford to raise the federal minimum wage to help people live above the poverty line, and the way that we can do that is by passing the Raising the Wage Act of 2019. The overall problem of working for minimum wage is it's hard for single people and families to live on due to rising prices. By raising minimum wages, many things will happen. It will cause a reduction in income inequalities between races, genders, and classes, save taxpayers money, and cut back on government assistance, and increase economical purchasing power. Federal minimum wage was introduced by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1938 during the Great Depression. Pros and cons 2019. It started off at 25 cents per hour and has been increased 22 times. That puts us to where we are today at $7.25 per hour. That would be $290 a week and only $15,080 a year. How can someone afford rent, mortgage, taxes, medical, food, utilities, or even daycare on that amount? Minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009. Due to this stall, there's approximately 4.5 million people living in poverty. Scott, 2009. Low-wage workers today are making less per hour than their counterparts did 50 years ago. Fact sheet 2019. But poverty is not the only issue with minimum wages being low. Income inequality and poor worker production are effects of low wages. The United States has one of the lowest levels of inequality among the 34 members of Organizations for Economic Cooperations and Development, minimum wage 2009. 32% of women, 33% of Latinos, and 38% of African American employees would benefit from raising the wages. Babbitt, 2019. Work stress is a real issue with employees. If workers were paid more, their physical and mental health would increase, reduce absences from work, and lower employee turnover rates. 15% of the nation's buying power has decreased due to people not having enough money to spend. By raising the wages, more purchasing power would go back to the people. But there's a yin and yang to every situation, and raising wages has its own. State and government decision makers have said that raising the minimum wage will have negative effects on the economy. Some of these businesses would have to lay off workers, which would raise unemployment rates. They would turn to robots to do work to cut costs, and small businesses would be forced to close. If people are laid off, this will cause them to depend more on government assistance and unemployment benefits to live. With companies having less workers, they would turn to robots to do the work because they don't have to pay them. Small businesses will close because they don't make enough money to pay their employees. But that will not stop the push for higher wages. By passing the Raise the Wage Act of 2019, The nation as a whole would greatly benefit from affordable housing to meeting everyday essentials. Even with the risk of shutting down, 67% of small business owners support the minimum wage increase to $15 an hour, Babbitt 2019. As of 2019, 33 states have increased their minimum wages. Raising the minimum wages to $15 per hour by the year 2024 will help citizens to afford their families and lifestyles. 75% of people now support raising wages. Even with the negative outcomes, our economy can afford to raise the wages, and the way to do it is by passing the Raise the Wage Act of 2019. Thank you.
Good job.
There you go.